All right, today we are looking forward to week 4 in the NFL, talking some matchups that I'm really excited about for fantasy, obviously covering the matchup of the week, and then going to continue my good streak going from last week, giving you some more my guys that you should feel confident in that are going to lead you to victory this week. So as always, if this is helping or you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button right about there, subscribe button, hit the like button, share with your friends, all that fun stuff, and hope you enjoy the episode today. Welcome back into TwinTakes Fantasy Football, and if you can believe it, we're almost a quarter of the way through the NFL season as we approach week 4 of the NFL. Time flies when you're having fun or horrifically fretting about fantasy football. So I loved the setup that we had last week going with matchups we're looking forward to as we compass matchups as a whole, doing our quick hits, best of the rest, the matchups I didn't really want to do a deep dive into, covering the matchup of the week, and finally finishing it off with my guys for the weekend. Did really, really well in that one. So hope you guys have confidence in the 5 guys that I have listed for you here today. So let's get into it without any further ado. First matchup I'm looking forward to is going to be tonight, the Thursday night game after the dud that was last week, and we have an absolute banger of a matchup in the Dolphins versus the Bengals. The over-under is set at 47. These over-unders have been coming down. So unfortunately, unlike week 1 where we saw, I think, 5 or 6 over-unders over 50 points, not going to be too many over 50-point over-unders anymore, just with the low-scoring path that the NFL has taken. Cincinnati is currently favored by 4.0. I don't understand why. I'm taking Miami in this game, but that's just how Vegas has set the odds. They obviously know more than I do, which leaves us at a projected point total for Miami of 21.5, and the Bengals are projected to get 25.5 currently. So why I'm excited about this game. Tua has the most pass yards of any quarterback through 3 weeks, and Waddle and Tyreek are 2 out of the top 3 leading wide receivers in yards, along with Stephon Diggs of the Bills. And Waddle is still, in my opinion, the number 1 target in this offense. He's clearly the wide receiver 1. He has the target share. He has the target volume. Everything, all statistically, he points to as the target, as the wide receiver 1 for this team, which, again, if you picked him up in the 4th round, you're very happy to get the wide receiver 1 behind Tyreek Hill in the 2nd round. But despite my undying love for Waddle, the narrative this week is going to be Tyreek versus Eli Apple in that revenge game from the Twitter beef after the AFC Championship game last year in the Bengals versus the Chiefs. That was a very weird soundbite from Tyreek going, "I own you, boy, I own you." But yeah, it seems like Tua is going to target Tyreek early and often if he's in one-on-one coverage. So if you're a prop guy, bet the Tyreek over on completions, yards, everything. I think Tyreek's going to absolutely go off this game, and that's the nature of volatility. Tyreek had a bad game with 4.3 fantasy points last week. This week, he's probably due for a 30-point fantasy game. Also, I say that because I'm facing him in my leagues, so he's bound to go off. That's just the way fantasy works. I am going to be leading away from running backs as there's still a ton of uncertainty who is the actual lead rusher between Mostert and Edmonds. Obviously, Edmonds was one that got in the end zone twice last week, but Raheem Mostert still outsnapped Edmonds. So there's just a lot of confusion as to who's actually going to be the lead back and who's going to get the valuable touches in this offense. So I'm going to back off a little bit. Waddle and Hill are obviously smash plays for me, and I'm not going to hate on Tua. I love Tua. I think he's taken a step in the right direction. I think he's proven himself as a passer, taken the next step, improved his arm strength, but I don't think the entire increase in how this Miami Dolphins team has performed is entirely based on Tua. I think it's a lot revolving around what Mike McDaniels has been able to come do and how he's been able to revamp the offense. I mean, if you go look, would love to shout out Rich Eisen's show and Anthony Hawkins, a former wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns when Mike McDaniels was a wide receiver coach there, told this amazing story about how he would have just this incredible mad scientist approach to the game, and they were watching Allen Iverson film in order to work on their get-offs from the line of scrimmage and get themselves open, and it actually worked. So just the way that Mike McDaniels approaches the game and coaches, I think, is revolutionizing everything that's going on down there in Miami. So even if Tua is not at full health, even with Teddy being at QB, I still think I love the wide receivers in this matchup, and I think Miami should be dominant. I'm not going to try and take away from Tua, but I think the scheme definitely helps. On the other side, Joe Burrow and the rest of the Bengals, they all looked good, but it's also against the Jets. So Jets are making everyone look like a pro NFL team at this point. The thing I want to talk about is Joe Burrow hasn't looked amazing against pressure this year, and we look at the guys that he faced in week 1: T.J. Watt, week 2: Micah Parsons. Immense pressure, really up the gut, made him really feel uncomfortable, and he had terrible games. And Jets couldn't really levy the pressure on him, and even though there is slight uncomfortability in the pocket, he was still able to scramble out and make throws. So I think with the likes of that Miami defense, it's going to actually regress a little bit for Joe Burrow, just because we can see that so far this year he's been very, very uncomfortable when it comes to getting that sort of pressure. So that's one thing I am watching for in this game, is how Joe Burrow responds to that pressure, because that's why one of the main reasons why I went to the Super Bowl was his ability to deal with adverse pressure coming down in the pocket. I am going to stay away just with the Mixon injury. I'm staying away from any sort of run game, especially with that defensive line that Miami has. And I don't think it's Samaje Perine. I mean, as good as he was last week, he did get in the end zone, but I don't think he establishes the run game in any sort of meaningful manner against this Miami defense. And that honestly just means more positivity for Joe Burrow in the pass game, whether it's T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, or Jamar Chase. If they get down early to the Miami Dolphins, Burrow's going to sling it all over the field. So that being said, I expect this to be a high-scoring game. The must-starts here, obviously Waddle, Hill, T. Higgins, Chase, and Burrow, based on kind of how I envision the passing game really taking over both of these offenses. You're probably starting Tua if he's healthy. If he's not healthy, there's obviously got some good waivers that you go pick up. And you're also going to probably start Boyd, again, with just the narrative surrounding Samaje Perine being the leading back. And if you need a spot start at wide receiver, I think Boyd is going to be one of those guys you can absolutely start. In a desperation effort, you can definitely start Gesicki. Edmonds would be the running back I would choose if I had to start one, but again, I would be looking for somewhere else. And if you're very, very desperate, then you can start Samaje Perine. But again, I don't think he's going to do too much against that Miami front. I think the line currently favors the Bengals by 4 points, just because of the Tua injury. Again, I don't think the Tua being injured is going to be as impactful as people think it is. I think a lot of the success has been driven from Mike McDaniel's schemes. So I don't think the Bengals are all the way back to full strength, and I'm going to take the Dolphins to cover the 4 points. And if I was really betting, I'm going to take them to win outright. But, +4, I really like that odds for an offense that's as dynamic as the Dolphins. Moving on to our second game, is going to be Jags at the Eagles. The over-under is, again, another 47-point over-under, with the Eagles favored by 6.5 points. This leaves a projected point total for the Eagles of 27, and the Jags have 20.5. So why do I like this game? Well, Eagles are one of the only 2 undefeated teams left in the NFL, and they look to be the cream of the crop, especially in the NFC, with a lot of those teams like the Rams and the Buccaneers seemingly taking a step back as far as their offensive pieces goes. They have a very dynamic mix of offense, whether it's Hurts passing the ball, Hurts running the ball, their committee of backs. Hurts is clearly in the MVP race as of now, and doesn't look to be slowing down. So the fact that they can beat you in both on the ground and through the air, I want every piece of that offense. They are currently top 3 in offensive efficiency according to PFF, and if a team is that good, you just want pieces, because that's going to lead to yards and racking up points for fantasy. On the other side of the ball, I think against the Chargers, that was T-Law's breakout game. He looks really good. He handles himself really well against a decent Chargers a decent Chargers defense. We talked about how the strength of the Jags really is in their 2-headed attack from the running back position in both James Robinson and Travis Etienne. And James Robinson has been an absolute epiphany at the position. Coming back from only 9 months from an Achilles injury, what he's doing is nothing short of incredible. So Eagles do have some dogs in the secondary, but like every team they have faced has been able to work the run game on them. Last week, the only TD that was scored on them was by Antonio Gibson. And also, if we look back to week 1, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams both put in quite a bit of work against the Eagles in the run game. So expect CD Gardner-Johnson as well as Darius Slay to shut down the passing attack from T-Law, and look for the running backs of the Jags to be at their absolute best against this Eagles defense. So again, Eagles defense is a little bit weak in the run game, and it plays exactly into the Jags' strengths. So the must starts here, no surprise. Jalen Hurts, you're starting him every week, no matter what the matchup is. A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith, after that breakout game, he's now elevated himself into must-start territory. Miles Sanders. Jags defense is still young, still on the negative sides of yards allowed. So Miles Sanders, despite a poor performance, I'm still believing in him. Dallas Goedert, you have to start. James Robinson, Christian Kirk, and Travis Etienne will also be in a must-start. I know he's been a little bit disappointing through the first 3 weeks, but you have to keep playing him. You drafted him highly for this. I still believe in Travis Etienne. In the probably starts, you're probably going to start Trevor Lawrence. I mean, if last week was any indication of how well he's played, I have full confidence that he can go ahead and actually put up decent numbers, even though the Eagles defense is looking very good. He's also a mobile quarterback, so he should be able to run and scramble a little bit and pick up yards on the ground as well. So if you have Trevor Lawrence, especially considering how some of the other quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, how they all played out, even Derek Carr, even if you have Dak injured, if you have Trey Lance injured, Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be starting for you. Desperation starts. Evan Ingram. I am playing him in a couple of my leagues just because I believe that there's such a lack of availability at the pass catching position for the Jaguars that Evan Ingram can still provide a lot of value there. And Zay Jones, if I'm not super confident in him, but this is like an absolute desperation. You need someone and there's no one else left. Zay Jones. I think the target share has been there through the first 3 games, getting double-digit targets in 2 out of those 3 games. So the opportunity is there for him to actually put up some points. As far as who I have winning, it's got to be the Eagles covering. They're so dominant that you just can't bet against them currently. Even with almost a full touchdown spread right now, I'm still taking the Eagles. All right, third game that I really want to highlight here is going to be Seahawks at the Lions. It has an over-under of 48 points with the Lions favored by 4.5. That currently leads projected point totals for Seattle to be 22.5, and the Lions are currently projected to have 25.5 points. Listen, the Lions are going to be on these matchups that I'm looking forward to quite a bit, if not every week. They're top 5 in points scored, and they're also top 5 in points allowed. So that's just juicy for fantasy. They're going to put up points and they're also going to allow points, which is everything we want to see from leading and dictating a high scoring game. And just that's a hotbed for fantasy points. Even with the injuries, the offense should still remain dynamic. We saw Jamal Williams last game get in the end zone twice, rushed for over 87 yards. He still has got that juice, and he doesn't have to be that workhorse back. They still have Craig Reynolds there to back him up. He showed some juice down the stretch last game, so I know they have confidence in him. They'll give Jamal Williams some time to rest and recuperate while substituting Craig Reynolds in. So I think the running game should remain pretty strong, even with DeAndre Swift recovering from that ankle injury. Also, DJ Chark has really quietly been having a very good season and will be a great option if Amon-Ra St. Brown cannot be at full strength with that ankle injury. I think that's low-key one of the best signings of the offseason. He's performed. He's had pretty high target share, over 20% of the target share in the Lions offense, and hasn't gotten in the end zone yet, but has been putting up quite a bit of chunk yards, and it's only a matter of time before he gets in the end zone and balls out for fantasy. So if Amon-Ra is out, DJ Chark is definitely someone I would want to start. On the other side of the ball, Seahawks are the epitome of the new age of the NFL. They just put a ton of weapons in place, and they didn't reach for a quarterback in the draft. They didn't go out and sign a veteran quarterback. They just got a bridge guy and let the offensive pieces around him dictate the offense. Geno is a mobile quarterback in the most minimal sense of the word, but even those extra 2 to 4 points from a few rushing yards on the ground, that's fantasy gold to a quarterback. No one's going to care. No one's going to complain about an extra 2 to 4 points on the ground. DK finally got in the end zone, and I think Pete Carroll probably is going to figure out that running back situation sooner rather than later. I am leaning Kenneth Walker to break out here pretty soon, but I wouldn't be starting either of those running backs. But Tyler Lockett looked really good last game. DK Metcalf is obviously DK. He is the heart and soul of that offense. And again, learning curve for the rookie Kenneth Walker, but I do like his long-term prospects being one of the best pure runners coming out of that 2022 draft class. So should be a high-scoring game based on the defense and the very few fantasy pieces that are actually cutting into this pie. With the injuries, you don't have a lot of fantasy pieces to choose from, so a lot of production is going to be going to those singular options. Let's get into the must-starts. I mean, DK Metcalf's an absolute must-start. Jamal Williams, I'm starting him over Travis Etienne in a couple leagues. I'm starting him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's bumped up into a top 10 running back for me on the week. If Amon-Ra is healthy, I'm definitely going ahead and starting Amon-Ra. And if Amon-Ra is not healthy, I'm going to be playing DJ Chark no matter what. In the probably starting aspect, Jared Goff, he's been a really good fit quarterback for fantasy, and I don't expect that to stop versus a very weak Seattle defense after they've had a few injuries, including their star safety in Jamal Adams. Tyler Lockett, you also probably have to start, and TJ Hawkinson. I know he's had a disappointing start, but he is a highly drafted tight end, and he is very talented when he gets the ball in his hands. There's just been a bunch of other options to siphon targets away from him. But if DeAndre Swift is injured, if Amon-Ra sits out the game, then TJ Hawkins probably going to be a go, and I'll have faith in him going forward. The desperation starts are going to be Kenneth Walker, as I think he'll be the stronger running back in this backfield, and Geno Smith. if you want to know what my feelings on Geno Smith, I'm starting him over Matthew Stafford. That's what I've gotten to in a couple of my leagues, and that's how little. I don't know if that says more about Matthew Stafford or Geno Smith, but yeah, fully confident in playing Geno Smith over Matthew Stafford this week. Right now, I love what Detroit is doing, but their offense and their defense, the delta between those two is not a 4.5 differential. So I'm going to pick Seattle to cover, but Detroit pulls out the victory in a 3-point win. Again, they're going to put up a lot of points on offense, but the defense isn't good enough yet to the point where they can continue to outpace the other team by more than 3 points. Again, love Lions to win, but a line giving that many points to Seattle is just too juicy. Plus, Seattle's just a really scrappy team, so I expect them to actually get in and put in some work and never count Seattle out. They're always going to come in and give a fight no matter what the odds are, as we saw in Week 1 versus the Broncos. So, finally, last matchup I really, really want to highlight here is going to be Chiefs-Buccaneers. Not even so much from a fantasy perspective, but just from a real-world perspective. This is going to be a very entertaining game, as it has a lot of implications as far as standings. Is Tom Brady going to pass the torch to Patrick Mahomes? Blah, 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 blah. All the NFL narratives that the media loves to hype up. But over-under on this one's 45, so the lowest over-under we have talked about on this show so far. Kansas City is currently favored by 2 points, which leads to a projected point total of Kansas City of 23.5, and Tampa Bay on the other side is going to be projected with 21.5. Again, have to reiterate, does not look juicy for fantasy, and there are some options that I'm definitely fading, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus the Tampa Bay defense. I'm definitely fading him very hard in this matchup. But there are teams that are both coming off pretty brutal losses. Patrick Mahomes is still the most magical player in the NFL. Again, I've been adamant that he is the best quarterback in the league, bar none, a generational talent that's been unseen in the NFL before, and we should savor what he can do on the field because it probably won't be seen for decades, if not ever. So I think this is just, time for the cream of the crop to rise. It's time for the cream to rise to the top. And I think Patrick Mahomes, after a really disappointing loss to Indianapolis, is ready for the challenge. The strength of the Tampa Bay defense is their defensive line and Vita Vea leading a bunch of other veterans. So this is really going to force Patrick Mahomes to take advantage of his offensive weapons and really throw the ball down and see what he can do with his arm to create points and create pressure on the Tampa Bay defense and really open up the run game if they choose to utilize it. But if Patrick Mahomes is the guy that we think he is, he should be able to dice up that secondary, even with Devin White and a couple of other good options in the Tampa Bay secondary. On the other hand, it's pretty simple. Tom Brady does get his main weapon, Mike Evans, back, and he hasn't been able to do much. And he hasn't really just had to do much. The defense has been so good, they don't have to really rely on Tom Brady, which is very similar and reminiscent to the Super Bowl year Peyton Manning had with the Broncos. He just wasn't that good because he didn't need to be that good. They just ran the ball. They kept things on the ground. They just kept control of the game and let the defense dictate what was going to happen. So I think that the competition Tampa Bay has faced so far hasn't been that good. So they just really haven't had to do much. But Patrick Mahomes is going to be another animal altogether. So it really is going to force Tom Brady to come out. Thankfully, he does have Mike Evans back. He's going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to put up more than 12 points to win this game, and obviously want to see how they respond to losing to the Packers last week. So should just be an interesting game from that standpoint, but again, I don't think it's going to be a wild blowout. I'm not going to take the under or the over right now at 45. I think it's pretty accurately aligned by Vegas odd makers, but the must plays, you got to play Patrick Mahomes, you have to play Travis Kelce, Mike Evans, and Leonard Fournette is a guy that is absolutely going to be, despite a couple of down weeks, you still have to have your faith in him. You're probably playing Tom Brady, and just because of how we analyzed the defensive line and the strength of if Kansas City wants to win this game, they will have to throw the ball. So you're probably going to be playing Juju and MVS just based on the opportunities they should be getting in this game. Desperation plays is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I am looking for options all over the waiver wires not to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I do not want to see him go up against Vita Vea and that defensive line. Mecole Hardman, I don't think will have good. Russell Gage. If Julio and Godwin are out, he might be a decent flex play, but he only got a good fantasy game last week because Mike Evans was out, and there was literally no other options for Tom Brady to throw to. So with Mike Evans back, I don't think I can have any more faith in Russell Gage, but if he's there, you got to have a desperation. My pick for the game, I'm thinking Tampa Bay wins outright. Brady has always had Mahomes' number, and this defense is just so solid that I can't really bet against them right now. So Moving on, we're going to do our quick hits, best of the rest, touching in on a couple games and just a couple sentences here and there. First one, the morning game at 8:30 a.m. my time will be Vikings at Saints. So my prediction, Kirk Cousins is just going to go Super Saiyan, being the farthest possibly removed from a primetime game, both in hours and visibility, being all the way over there in London. And Justin Jefferson, I understand it's been a really down start or down bad 2 weeks for Justin Jefferson, but like he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Like, come on, you have to play him. You saw last week that they beat the Lions, who's a good team. Lions were triple covering Justin Jefferson, and that didn't work because Kirk Cousins actually found it in himself to throw to other options outside of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne. So now that's going to keep other teams honest and should open up Justin Jefferson to another fantastic week yet again. Dalvin is definitely a go for if he's healthy. We've seen him have this injury before. We've seen him be productive with this injury before. So if he's on the field, I have no qualms about playing him. And right now, this is the get-right game for Kamara against this Vikings defense. If he doesn't perform against this defense, it is time to hit the panic button on Kamara. Maybe sell him while the name is still somewhat relevant and valuable. But after a fourth straight bad game for Kamara, I would be panicking. So I'm really paying attention to Kamara in this game. Browns, Falcons. Don't let the last game fool you. There's no passing options I'm really looking forward in the Browns. The heart and soul of that team is the run game. I understand it's been a couple upsetting games where Nick Chubb has been the focal point of the run game and Kareem Hunt has had pretty bad games for fantasy. But I think that, in this game against a paltry Falcons defense, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are the only two options to go for. I think the Browns will continue to ground and pound their way to victory over the Falcons. On the Falcons side, obviously, it's tragic what happened to Myles Garrett, and also Jadeveon Clowney is out, but this should leave the Browns defense pretty susceptible to taking yards. We're playing the big four from the Falcons. Don't overthink it. Mariota, Pitts, Patterson, London. Just play them, and then don't watch the game. Commanders at Cowboys. Terry McLaurin should be going for 100 yards here. I think it's going to be the best game of the season for T-Mac. He'll be shadowed by Trayvon Diggs, who might have an interception off of the turnover-prone Carson Wentz, but also he'll give up over 100 yards to Terry McLaurin, and over 10 points should lead to Terry's biggest game of the week. Commanders sit with a bottom 5 defense in the league, despite how vaunted that defensive line is. So, should be continued breakout game for CD. Zeke and Pollard are all a go, especially against that paltry defensive line. Chargers, Texans. The thing I want to highlight from this game is going to be the same thought process for Pierce as the Jags running backs last week. We talked about how the Chargers play a specific brand of defense that invites the run and really plays against the passing game. So again, I'm not going to look for Brandon Cooks bounce back this week, but I expect Dameon Pierce to continue his dominance that we saw last week. He'll get in the end zone again. And this is just, we're talking about process, evaluation of defenses and strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, Joey Bosa is out, which makes it even more of a juicy matchup for the running game. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do for the Chargers. Obviously, this is another aspect. Same with Kamara. With all the injuries to Herbert, with Keenan Allen not fully 100%, with Jalen Guyton out, the run game against a very bad Texans team should run through Austin Eckler. This should be Eckler's breakout game. I expect him to score over 20 points. If he does not, it's time to push the panic button on Eckler, and I don't feel bad for saying that. Cardinals, Panthers. This is my last chance for DJ Moore against the worst secondary in the entire league, according to PFF. CMC is absolutely a smash play. I know he hasn't been great for fantasy, but he's been good and consistent and one of the top 10 running backs so far in the season. So be patient, CMC, keep playing him. And obviously, I loved what I saw from Hollywood and Kyler. Let's just hope that they keep that connection going. Let's hope Hollywood finds the end zone against the Cardinals defense, that their secondary is also not that strong. And we just need Kyler to run for more than 8 yards for him to be fantasy relevant. Broncos, Raiders. My notes here just says this is vomit. What happens when the worst statistical offense goes against a below average defense? One has to give, right? Like, the Broncos have to put up some points against the Raiders, or is it just still going to be continued incompetence from Russell Wilson and crew over in Mile High? I have negative confidence in the Broncos right now, and the Broncos defense means that they've been really good. Despite how bad the offenses look, the Broncos defense is still pretty incredible at what they've been able to do to opposing teams. So my only really confident play from the Las Vegas side will be Devontae Adams. I am sitting Hunter Renfrow. I am sitting Darren Waller. Yes, I'm sitting Darren Waller. And I don't know, like Broncos, I'm if there's anyone even close on the Broncos side, I will be sitting them in favor of someone else. I would play Jamal Williams over Javonte Williams if that's any indication of how strongly I don't believe in the Broncos right now. Last one I want to touch on, Rams 49ers. I said it earlier, I'm playing Geno Smith over Matt Stafford. That's all you have to know about that Rams offense going up against that 49ers defense. And the Rams secondary has been so bad to start the season despite having Jalen Ramsey. The stars and scrubs method has not been working so far in 2022. So Debo and Ayuk are actually pretty interesting plays here against the Rams. So now we can go on to our matchup of the week. Again, no surprise to anyone. The matchup is going to be...
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Bills at the Ravens. We finally have an over-under of over 50 points. So it's currently marked at 51.5 points with the Bills favored by 3 points. That leaves projected point totals of Bills at 27.5. Ravens are currently projected at 25. This is going to be the battle of the top offense of the leagues, and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are currently the quarterback 1 and the quarterback 2 on the year. Both top 3 in points scored again with Jalen Hurts. And on paper, these defenses seem to be top tier, but after close inspection, they look really ripe to be picked apart by both opposing quarterbacks. Kyle Hamilton has struggled as a rookie, which is not surprising. Rookies typically tend to struggle in coverage in their rookie year. Most cornerbacks, it's a huge learning curve when it comes into the NFL. And there's also been some regression by the Ravens. As a whole by the Ravens. Marcus Peters hasn't looked as good as he has been in the past couple of years. And they've allowed and so far the Ravens have allowed the most deep completions to opposing offenses. And this is two quarterbacks that include Mac Jones and Tua Tagovailoa, two quarterbacks that really aren't known for their arm strength. So look for Josh Allen and the deep threats in Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs to absolutely take advantage of that. On the other side of the ball, both Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are out. The Bills just signed Xavier Rhodes, who barely played last year, if that shows you any kind of state of what their secondary is in. So given that these passing offenses should be absolutely dominant, and this is the highest over-under, I expect fantasy points galore. And should be one of the more exciting games of the week, especially between two top teams in the AFC. Could be a potential AFC championship preview right here. Very exciting for that. Must-starts, obviously Lamar Jackson, best player in fantasy so far this year. Knock on wood. Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. You got to start all those guys just based on the passing game for both these ones. I'm probably starting Devin Duvernay just because we mentioned how weak the secondary of the Bills currently is, and we've seen how Devin Duvernay has been much better than anticipated and has actually eaten some of Rashad Bateman's production. It was actually the better wide receiver on the week last week versus the Patriots. So I will probably be starting Devin Duvernay. And from a running back standpoint, this is where we first see it. Devin Singletary. We saw him play really, really well last week against the Dolphins. So if there's any sort of lingering injury to Isaiah McKenzie, if there's any sort of lingering injury to Gabe Davis, expect Devin Singletary to be the lead back. He's clearly the lead back up there in Buffalo and should be heavily utilized by Josh Allen. And again, the desperation starts. J.K. Dobbins, this is where he falls. He was on a snap count last week, and I don't know if he's back to full strength yet. I'm still waiting for him to actually show me that he has some juice before I put him in my starting lineup. If he has a good game this week, great, but it's also against a really, really great defensive line for the Bills with Boogie Basham, Ed Oliver, and Von Miller. So this is not going to be the get-right game for J.K. Dobbins. If he has a good game, fantastic. I would love to see it on my bench and put him in next week. Dawson Knox has been really disappointing for tight end managers so far, but listen, all tight ends have basically been disappointing. And if you don't really have any other options, he's absolutely a start here. And if Isaiah McKenzie is healthy and you have no better options, I would reach for Isaiah McKenzie here. My game pick really relies on the health of Josh Allen. He had an injury to his throwing hand at the end of last week that really hasn't been talked about, where he hit, I believe, his middle finger on the tip of an opposing helmet, and that's why he kind of threw one of his last passes into the ground and couldn't complete it. So if that injury persists, this is a clear victory for the Ravens because obviously Josh Allen is the heart and soul of that Bills team. So we just don't know. The Bills really haven't said anything about Josh Allen's injury. They've been very tight-lipped. It's going to be interesting to go out there and see. I'm going to look at Josh Allen with a little bit of hesitation so far because I did see what his last passes looked like, and it didn't look like he wasn't not affected. So hopefully he can come out and see what we can do with that hand, and hopefully it's not a long-term injury. But yeah, I'm going to pick Ravens money line, given the information that we know right now, given what I saw with my own two eyes at the end of last game. It's going to be Ravens money line. All right. My guys for the week had a really good report card last week. 3 A's, a B, and a D. Definitely much better than the week before. So I'm going to try to pick some guys that you have I have some bounce backs here, some breakouts here, and some obviously guys that I picked, working through a specific process of evaluating defenses, and hopefully going to lead you to some more victories this week. Number one is going to be Jamal Williams versus Seattle. I already talked about this earlier. Had so much juice last week when DeAndre Swift left with that ankle injury. Seattle is one of the worst defenses in the league, especially with Jamal Adams out. I expect the offense to run through Jamal Williams and expect tons of dump offs from Jared Goff. He's going to be a smash play. Again, I am starting him over Javonte Williams. If that gives you any indication of how confident I am in Jamal Williams. So number two is going to be Kareem Hunt versus Atlanta. Yes, he's been very disappointing the past 2 games, but again, don't let last game fool you with the passing volume to both Amari Cooper and David Njoku. This is a team that really goes through the running defense. It's going to ease back towards, it's going to regress towards the median. Kareem Hunt will get involved. This Atlanta defense is not strong up front, so expect both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt to put up very solid weeks, and I have faith starting Kareem Hunt despite the past 2 disappointing performances. Number 3, Rashad Bateman versus the Bills. This is going to be another bounce back because we thought that against the Patriots, he was going to have an absolute amazing game. And when the Ravens put up 37 points and Rashad Bateman only ends up with 4.8 fantasy points, you come away feeling a little disappointed. That's just the nature of the Patriots defense. They go away, they take away your number one option, they force you to move and target other players. Versus the Bills, we talked about their lapses in secondary and their injuries all over the field back there. So I expect Rashad Bateman to get a bunch of targets down the field. I expect him to have at least one bomb play that breaks open the game, and expect him to get in the end zone and should be a smash play versus the Bills. Number 4, a guy we haven't really talked about yet, is Chris Olave. We saw both Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas leave with injuries last week, so that clearly makes Chris Olave the guy with the most juice, and the best ability is availability, and he's the one that's most available right now. He's been playing excellent in the first 3 games for a rookie. Truly impressed by what I've seen him do coming onto the field, and if both Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are either out or still not 100%, expect Chris Olave to be the number 1 target in that offense. We have seen Alvin Kamara regress a little bit this year. He just hasn't had that same explosivity off the line and hasn't been as involved in the pass game. So this all points to a massive Chris Olave game versus a Vikings defense that I don't really have that much faith in. And finally, we're going to talk about Dameon Pierce. Going back to back on Dameon Pierce and my guys, I think it's going to be a continued breakout. And really, the reason why I have Dameon Pierce here is I want to talk about how how we do and evaluate defenses, and how, again, last week one of the headlines we talked about was opportunity versus talent. And I tend to fall on the side of people that have the more opportunity are going to have more fantasy points. And this is just something, again, a Chargers defense that the way Brandon Staley plays it, he really invites the run. He plays a lot of too high safety coverage. The linebackers back off, especially with Joey Bosa out. It's really going to be conducive to the run game. We saw that last week pay off in dividends for James Robinson against what we thought was this amazing Chargers defense, but he still scored almost 20 fantasy points. And I expect the same thing to happen for Dameon Pierce this week versus the Chargers, just based on the opportunity that the Chargers allow their running backs. So those are my 5 guys for the week. Just to recap, it's going to be Jamal Williams versus Seattle, Kareem Hunt versus Atlanta, Rashad Bateman versus the Bills, Chris Olave versus the Vikings, and Dameon Pierce against the Chargers, which is a great matchup for running backs all around. So, all right, now we're going to get into week 4. I have one more parting thought for you guys.
There's only one thing that I'm not clear about.
Actually, there is one thing.
One other thing.
All right. We are now a quarter of the way into the league. I know it still seems early in the year, but almost 25% of the games played are done. If you have lost faith in a player, we're talking Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, even Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, all guys that had really disappointing starts to the season. If you are out on them, you need to sell now. The further you get into the season, the less that name is going to mean and more people are going to care about actual production. Allen Robinson last year, people after 2 weeks were talking about him being a major buy low candidate. After week 8, he was being dropped and sitting on fantasy waiver wires. So you better be ready to trade now or forever hold your peace that you may need to drop said player. So I know it's still early in the season, but this is a time where name value still means something. People are still looking at draft capital just a little bit. So you're obviously not going to get a full return on some of these guys, but If you have lost confidence and you don't want to sit around and deal with it anymore, the time to sell is now and improve your team, especially if you're sitting at a 1-2 or a 2-2 after week 4. So that's my last thought. Again, should be another amazing week of games. I think this is the most games we've talked about in a preview episode, which means there's a lot of fantasy points to go around, a lot of interesting storylines and narratives going on around the NFL. So very excited to sit back and enjoy some more fantasy games, some more NFL games this weekend, and I will see you guys for the recap next week. Take care.